So now that the bankruptcy has been finalized as of November 5th, is there any hard evidence that people can point to say, oh, look, here's a document, even though these are governed by bank treaties, here's a document and it says, this is the date that the bankruptcy began and this is the date that it ended. Is there any hard evidence that people can point to?
Well, the place to look for this stuff is in the congressional record of September 2015, when Pope Francis came to the United States and addressed the Congress. That was kind of like the adieu and here we are. Then in the months following that, President Obama made a whole bunch of different maneuvers that related to that by executive orders and other administrative orders. I'm looking for a particular YouTube video clip in which Obama was talking to a bunch of lawyers, and he was telling them that basically they were switching gears and no longer charging our estates, the Sestakea estates that were the all capital letters, first, middle, and last names. But they were going to switch gears and they were going to start charging the all capital letters, first, middle initial, and last.
The transmitting utility.
Which are public transmitting utilities. And this was going on in tandem with the Puerto Rican Electrical Utility Corporation being bankrupted. If you remember that whole song and dance, and you kind of scratched your ears and said, well, what does that have to do with the price of beans in China? And why is this on the national news that an electrical utility in Puerto Rico is going bankrupt? And that's some big deal? Well, it was a big deal because you were all franchises of that corporation, according to them, of course, in their, fantasy world, their make-believe world.
Gotcha.
And so they started charging off their debts against the bankrupt franchises of that Puerto Rican electrical utility. And they were all named after you, and they were named things like Anna M. Reisinger. Okay? So that's just more of this endless sea of bull, as I call it. Well, it is. I mean, we are literally up to our nostrils in a sea of, hip waders doesn't even begin to deal with it. You have to swim, And so I'm looking for that video clip because in the middle of this video clip, and there's a pan, you just hear all these lawyers collectively go,
wow.
And I'm sure that there are others out there who saw this clip and who saved copies of it. I think I saved copies of it, but I just can't find it right now.
Yeah. It sounds very familiar. Yeah, and
it was, they were moving on to stage 2 of the Great Fraud.
Right.
And, this was their next dodge, their next layer of municipal franchises that they were going to lay off debt on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, so what does this mean to us now? Can any claims against the municipal be brought forward?
Well, the municipal corporation is dead. It was bankrupt and now it's defunct.
So there's nothing to bring forward to them.
Right. They cannot pay us back. They absolutely do not have the ability to pay us back. They stole so much from us that they couldn't possibly pay it back in 1,000 years.
Sure.
And so, they've basically scuttled the ship and have retreated back into their own little habitat and are sitting there on their sovereign tuffets going, well, you can't come after us because we're sovereign entities. We have state immunity. Yeah, well, folks, we have been raped, pillaged, and plundered. We have been betrayed. We have been the goats for 150 years. But we don't have to continue to be the goats for the next 150 years. And I think that's what Mr. Trump brought forward to the table when he suggested, mildly enough, that perhaps, just perhaps, countries like Germany and England and Japan should be paying something above 1% of their gross domestic product toward their own defense.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I remember that. Well,
and so anyway, we don't have to be the goats. So let's not.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. How does the municipal bankruptcy affect other countries? You were talking about, well, Puerto Rico is not another country, but how does it affect the outside world? Is there any direct effect from the bankruptcy that will reverberate in other countries?
Well, what's really going to reverberate in other countries is blocking them from booting up a new municipal corporation as the successor, keeping them from getting a successor contract. How can I explain a successor contract? In commerce, they have what are called implied contracts. And if you accept the services, then it's understood that you're going to pay for the services.
And that would be an implied.
For example,
contract.
Yeah, like you go into a restaurant, you sit down, you order the meal. It's an implied contract that they're going to bring you the food, you're going to eat it, and then you're going to pay for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's the same thing goes with government services. You have a need for skilled trade negotiators. You have a need for armed forces. You have a need for somebody to print your money, all sorts of different things. Okay, you have all these needs. And so if someone steps forward and starts doing that, they start producing that for you, then there's an implied commercial relationship and contract established that's implied, right? And if somebody picks up and starts doing that from another corporation that went bankrupt, then there is an implied successor relationship.
Got it.
Even if those two corporations are only similar in that they were chartered as U.S. corporations. Okay. So, ABC Corp goes bankrupt. DEF Corporation picks up and starts doing the same exact work and doing, operating the same way, maybe with the same board of directors. So, if you don't raise your hand and say, wait a minute, I don't have a contract with DEF Corporation, then that becomes a assumption of contract. And it becomes a successor contract where they become bound by all the same rules, regulations, and agreements that the successor had.
Interesting.
And you become bound because you accepted it, and by sumsit is what it's called. You assume the contract, you take it on, and then you have to pay up under it, right?
Yep.
But we've had enough problems with the municipal corporations, so we don't want them working for us under the same conditions. And so, they've been trying to trick us into accepting a new contract for a new municipal corporation, merely operating under a similar name. And they've also been trying to trick us into accepting whoever was popular with the employees as the president of that corporation, with the employers having not a word to say about it.
Yeah. Exactly. And we don't want to operate that way anymore.
No, we cannot trust, literally or figuratively, we cannot trust municipal employees to handle our affairs for us in a way that is for our benefit. They have proven in spades that they do nothing but serve themselves.
Yep, exactly. And we want no more to do with that.